Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 631, The Missing Teapot, Intermediate. Mrs. Higgins was a woman of simple pleasures. She enjoyed a good crossword puzzle, a lively chat with her neighbour, and, most importantly, her afternoon cup of tea. It was a ritual. Every day at precisely 4 o'clock, she would boil the water, warm the pot, and brew her favourite blend. Today, however, the ritual was broken. Mrs. Higgins entered her kitchen at 3:58 p.m., humming a cheerful tune, and stopped dead in her tracks. The teapot was gone. Not just moved, but completely missing. The space on the counter, where it had lived for 17 years, was empty. She panicked. "Good heavens!" she exclaimed to her budgie, Kevin. "Someone's taken the teapot." Kevin, a budgie of few words, simply blinked. Mrs. Higgins grabbed her magnifying glass and began a meticulous search of the kitchen. She looked under the sink, behind the bread bin, and inside the refrigerator. Nothing. She even checked the pantry, just in case it had mysteriously learned to fly and landed amongst the tins of sardines. The doorbell rang. It was her neighbour, Mr. Prindle, a man who believed in conspiracy theories and wore a tweed jacket even in summer. "Mrs. Higgins, you look flustered," he said, peering at her over his spectacles. "Is it the government? Have they finally come for the biscuits?" "Worse, Mr. Prindle," she whispered dramatically. "My teapot is missing. I suspect foul play." Mr. Prindle's eyes lit up. The Russians. They'd been trying to infiltrate the neighborhood's tea habits for years. He took out a small notebook and a pencil. "Tell me everything. Were there any strange sounds? Any suspicious characters loitering?" "Just the postman," Mrs. Higgins replied. "Aha! The postman. He's a known associate of the international parcel conspiracy," Mr. Prindle declared, scribbling furiously. He was likely a distraction while the co-conspirators made their move. The two of them went into the garden. Mr. Prindle began examining the lawn with his magnifying glass. "Look!" he shouted. "Footprints. Or? Are they? No, wait, that's just a squirrel." Suddenly, a loud "meow" came from the shed. Mrs. Higgins and Mr. Prindle looked at each other and crept towards the sound. The shed door was ajar. Inside, their jaws dropped. Her cat, Mildred, a fluffy ginger cat with a love for comfort, was curled up inside the missing teapot. It was a perfect fit, like a tiny, ceramic armchair. Mildred blinked lazily and yawned. Mrs. Higgins burst out laughing. Mr. Prindle simply shook his head and closed his notebook. "Well," he said, "I suppose it's not the Russians this time. Just a classic case of feline-related mischief." Mrs. Higgins carefully lifted the teapot, with Mildred still inside, and carried it back to the kitchen. She gave Mildred a gentle scratch behind the ears. "You can have all the afternoon naps you want, my dear," she said, "but next time, please don't take the teapot with you." She placed the teapot back on the counter, with Mildred now purring contentedly inside it, and finally made her cup of tea. Vocabulary notes. Flustered. Meaning, feeling agitated, nervous, or confused. When someone is flustered, they are often in a rush or a state of panic. Example from story, Mrs. Higgins, "You look flustered," he said, peering at her over his spectacles. Similar words, confused, agitated, disoriented, bewildered. Loitering. Meaning, to stand or wait around a place with no real purpose. It often has a slightly negative or suspicious connotation. Example from story, "Were there any strange sounds? Any suspicious characters loitering?" Similar words, lingering, hanging around, dawdling. Foul play. Meaning, a phrase used to describe a crime, especially a murder, or unfair or dishonest behavior. In the story, Mrs. Higgins is using it in a dramatic, humorous way. Example from story, my teapot is missing. I suspect foul play. Similar words, wrongdoing. Mischief. Underhandedness. Meticulous. Meaning, showing great attention to detail, very careful and precise. Example from story, Mrs. Higgins grabbed her magnifying glass and began a meticulous search of the kitchen. Similar words, thorough. Diligent. Painstaking. Jaws dropped. Meaning, an idiom used to describe a look of great surprise or astonishment. When a person's jaw drops, their mouth is open in shock. Example from story, inside, their jaws dropped. Similar words, amazed. Astounded. Stunned. Dumbfounded. Story written by Gemini AI. Image created by a Magix AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.
Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a really delightful, sort of mysterious short story called The Missing Teapot. It's quite charming, actually. Imagine this. A perfectly calm afternoon. Mrs. Higgins, she's just ready for her daily cup of tea, her ritual.
Right, with her favorite teapot.
Exactly. But today, something's wrong. That ritual is, well, it's broken. She goes into the kitchen, humming maybe, and boom, stops. The teapot gone.
Just not there.
Completely missing.
So our mission today is really to unpack this little narrative. We want to pull out not just the funny bits, the twists, but also maybe some interesting language lessons hiding in there.
Language lessons, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating how a simple little domestic mystery like a missing teapot can actually tell us a lot about, well, observation, assumptions.
Assumptions, definitely.
And even how a good story can, sneakily teach us new words, new ways of looking at things.
Okay, I like that. So let's dive right into this mystery then. Mrs. Higgins. Obviously, she's a bit panicked. Good heavens, someone's taken the teapot. That's her first thought.
Straight to theft.
Right. And then she does this really meticulous search. The story says under the sink, behind the bread bin.
Mm-hmm. Inside the fridge.
Inside the refrigerator, even the pantry. You can just picture her, can't you? Checking absolutely everywhere.
And that word meticulous. It's perfect, isn't it? It tells you she's being incredibly careful, very precise.
So thorough.
But it also kind of ironically highlights how our own assumptions can trip us up. Even being that careful, she's looking where it should be.
Ah, right. Not thinking outside the box, maybe.
Exactly. And then, because the simple answer isn't obvious, the mind jumps to something more dramatic. Which brings us to Mr. Pringle.
Oh, Mr. Pringle, the neighbor. He sounds like quite a character.
He is. He's the resident conspiracy theorist. He hears missing teapot and immediately thinks...
Foul play.
Yes. Foul play. Maybe the government or the Russians.
Yeah.
He even starts talking about an international parcel conspiracy.
Seriously, over a teapot.
Oh, yeah. And he eyes the postman suspiciously, talking about him loitering.
Loitering, that sounds quite sinister.
Well, yeah, loitering means hanging around without a clear purpose, often suspiciously. And foul play usually means, a crime, maybe even murder.
But here it's just missing crockery. It's brilliantly funny, that contrast.
It really is. The author's having fun there, using these high-stakes words for something so mundane. It tells us a lot about Mr. Pringle, but maybe also about us, how we sometimes inflate things.
Yeah, definitely. So the suspense builds. They hear this noise, right? A M-A-O-W from the shed.
A definite clue.
So Mrs. Higgins and Mr. Pringle, probably expecting, secret agents.
Or the loitering postman with the parcel conspiracy.
They creep towards the shed. And this is the big reveal.
This is the moment. And the story says their jaws dropped.
Yeah.
Just pure astonishment.
Because inside the shed...
they find Mildred, Mrs. Higgins's fluffy ginger cat.
And where is Mildred?
Curled up, perfectly comfortable, inside the missing teapot, using it like a little ceramic armchair.
Oh, that's brilliant. The cat. Of course.
Yeah, exactly. That phrase, jaws dropped, it just captures that feeling perfectly, that sudden, almost comical shock when the simple truth hits you. It completely deflates all those wild theories.
It's such a great image, Mildred and the teapot. It makes you think how often we build up these complicated stories in our heads.
Right.
Only to find the answer is something really simple. Maybe even, a adorable.
Totally. And the language the author uses really helps sell that. Like you mentioned, Mrs. Higgins being flustered at the start. What about that word?
Yeah, flustered. It feels so accurate for that initial moment.
It is, isn't it? It's not just confused, it's agitated, maybe a little panicked, because her routine, her order is just gone.
Yeah.
It perfectly sets the stage for her worry to grow.
It bridges that gap between just being annoyed and actual alarm.
Precisely.
So when we pull back, what's the takeaway here? I mean, this deep dive into a missing teapot. It really shows how fast we can leap to the most complicated explanation.
Mm-hmm. We do, don't we?
Yeah, and we completely miss the simple truth that might be right under our noses or, in the shed.
It's a great reminder, isn't it, to maybe question our first dramatic assumptions before we cry foul play about, I don't know, the missing TV remote or whatever.
Or a misunderstanding at work, perhaps.
Exactly. And beyond that, it just shows how a really engaging little story, especially when you look closely at the words used.
Like meticulous, loitering, flustered.
Right. It can be a fantastic way to pick up new vocabulary, but also to understand the feel of words in context, how they build humor or suspense.
It definitely makes learning new words feel less like homework and more like discovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been a really fun deep dive, unpacking a great little story and finding some language gems along the way.
It's been great. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Next time something vanishes unexpectedly in your life, what's the first place you look? Or maybe, what's the first assumption you make?
That's a good question.
And how often is that simple explanation, the kind of Mildred in the teapot answer, actually the most delightful one?
Definitely something to think about. Have you ever spun a whole complicated theory only to find a really simple, maybe even funny answer waiting? Keep an eye out for those moments.